Surah Shod. Surah Shad consists of 88 verses including the Makkiyah surah revealed after Surah Al Qamar. It is called Shaad because this chapter begins with the letter Shad. In this chapter, Allah swears by the Qur'an to show that the Qur'an is a great book, and that anyone who follows it will attain happiness in this world and the hereafter. It also shows that this Qur'an is a miracle of the Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessings of Allah be upon him, which states its truth and the height of its morals. The main contents of Surah Shad. Destruction of the enemies of the prophets. It is mentioned in Surah Shad verses 1 to 11. The Quran is a warning to unbelievers who live in arrogance and hostility. The generations before them who disobeyed Allah had been destroyed, but when the punishment came they asked for help without being able to escape. The disbelievers rejected the messenger sent to them, calling him a lying wizard because he invited them to worship one God. Their leaders ordered them to continue worshipping their gods, declaring that the teachings of monotheism were mere lies. They doubt why the Quran was revealed to the messengers among them, but their doubts are only because they have not yet experienced Allah's punishment. It was questioned whether they had control over Allah's mercy and kingdom, but the army that allied itself against Allah's messenger would surely be defeated. Certainty of the destruction of the opponents of the apostle. It is mentioned in Surah Shod verses 12 to 16. These verses state that before them, the people of Noah, Ad, Firan, Thamud, the people of Luth, and the people of Aika had lied to the apostles, and they were all groups who allied against the apostles. They all equally lied to the apostles, and therefore they deserve to suffer God's punishment. They are just waiting for an unexpected scream, and ask that Allah's torment be hastened before the day of reckoning arrives. The story of the prophet David. It is mentioned in Surah Shad verses 17 to 26. These verses tell about the patience and wisdom of the prophet David, who is remembered for his strength and always returning to Allah. Allah subdued the mountains and birds to glorify David and gave him strength, prophetic wisdom, and the ability to resolve matters. Once there were two people who had a dispute and asked David to make a fair decision between them. One of them complained that his brother, who had many female goats, wanted to take his only goat. David gave a just decision, asserting that people who partner often harm each other except those who believe and do good deeds. David realized that the test was only a test from Allah, then he asked for forgiveness, repented, and Allah forgave his mistakes. Allah then made David a caliph on earth, emphasizing the importance of making decisions fairly and not following one's desires, because those who go astray will receive a severe punishment for forgetting the day of reckoning. Proof of the existence of Allah and the truth of the Quran. It is mentioned in Surah Shad verses 27 to 29. Allah did not create the heavens, the earth, and all its contents in vain, but this assumption is only held by the unbelievers who will be wretched in hell. Allah questions whether it is fitting for those who believe and do good deeds to be equated with those who corrupt the earth, or whether it is fitting for those who are pious to be equated with the disobedient. The Quran was revealed as a book full of blessings so that humans could reflect on its verses, and people of sound mind could learn from it. The story of Prophet Solomon. It is mentioned in Surah Shad verses 30 to 40. These verses tell about the gift given to the prophet David, namely his son Suleiman, who was very obedient to Allah. One evening Solomon saw horses that were tame but running very fast, until he was tempted by pleasure and neglected to remember his Lord. After testing Solomon by weakening his body, Allah forgave him when he repented, asked for forgiveness, and asked for a kingdom that no one else after him deserved. Allah subdued the winds and demons to Solomon, gave him power over them, and gave grace without calculation. Solomon had a position close to Allah and a good place to return to. The story of the prophet Ayub. It is mentioned in Surah Shad verses 41 to 44. Allah reminded him of his servant Ayub, who was in pain and suffering because of being disturbed by Satan, but Allah gave him cool water to bathe and drink. Allah also gave Ayub a family and multiplied their number as a mercy and lesson for people of sound mind. Allah commanded Ayub to beat his wife with a bundle of grass without breaking his oath as a test of patience, and Ayub proved to be a patient and obedient servant of Allah. Stories of some selected prophets. It is mentioned in Surah Shad verses 45 to 48. Allah reminds us of his servants, such as Ibrahim, Ishaq, and Yaqub, who have the strength to obey him and clear vision. They were given a great gift, namely, awareness of the afterlife, and in the sight of Allah, they are among the best chosen people. Apart from that, Ismail, Ilyasa, and Zulkifli are also said to be the best people. Rewards for followers of the Prophet. It is mentioned in Surah Shad verses 49 to 54. Allah explains that for those who are pious, a good place of return is provided, namely heaven, and with its doors open for them. They would recline in it on couches, ask for fruit and plenty of drink, and be surrounded by nymphs whose view was limited to their partners and peers. All of this is God's promise on the Day of Judgment as a sustenance that will never run out from him. Punishment for the unbelievers. It is mentioned in Surah Shod verses 55 to 64. Allah explains that for those who are pious, there is a good place of return, namely the gardens of Eden with their doors open for them. They will recline therein on couches, asking for plenty of fruits and drinks, and surrounded by angels whose gaze is limited only to their partners and their peers. All of this is a promise of Allah on the Day of Reckoning, as a provision that will not run out from him. Only revelation Allah who explains the news of the unseen. It is mentioned in Surah Shad verses 65 to 70. The Prophet Muhammad was asked to convey that he was only a warning, that there is no God but Allah, the one and the all-conquering, the Lord of the heavens and the earth and their contents, the most mighty and forgiving. The Qur'an is great news, yet many turn away from it. The Prophet Muhammad stated that he had no knowledge of the disputes of the angels of heaven and that the revelation was only given to him as a clear warning. The story of the creation of Prophet Adam. It is mentioned in Surah Shad verses 71 to 85. These verses tell the story of when God created man from earth, breathed his spirit into him, and ordered the angels to bow down to him. All angels bowed except Satan, who was proud and refused to prostrate. God rebuked Satan, but Satan still insisted that he felt better because he was created from fire. As a result, Satan was expelled from heaven and cursed until the day of judgment. Satan begged for his sentence to be postponed until the day of judgment, vowing to mislead humans except God's chosen servants. Allah confirms that Satan and his followers will be filled with hell as a predetermined punishment. Al-Quran warning to humans. It is stated in Surah Shad verses 86 to 88. The Prophet Muhammad was asked to convey that he did not ask for compensation for his preaching, and was not a person who made things up. The Quran is described as a warning to all nature, and its truth will be proven at some time in the future. All of this is part of the duties and responsibilities of the Prophet Muhammad in conveying Allah's revelation to mankind. Conclusion of Surah Shad. From this chapter it can be concluded that every prophet who was sent always faced challenges and resistance from his enemies, but Allah destroyed those enemies, including the polytheists who opposed the Prophet Muhammad, PBUH. In addition, this chapter confirms that the Qur'an is a revelation from God, which reveals things that can only be known through revelation, including future events and past history, and without anyone telling it. In the context of faith, this chapter presents evidence for the prophethood of Muhammad, peace and blessings of Allah be upon him, including his knowledge of things that can only be known through revelation, as well as the oath of the devil to lead people astray except for the servants of Allah who are sincere. The stories told include the Prophet David, Alaihi Salam, the Prophet Solomon, Alaihi Salam, and the Prophet Job, Alaihi Salam. This chapter also records the reaction of the polytheists who were astonished to hear the Prophet Muhammad's Shalallahu Alaihi Wasallam confession about the oneness of Allah, as well as discussing the secrets behind natural events, quarrels between misguided people and their followers in hell, as well as the blessings given to the inhabitants of heaven and punishment for the inhabitants of hell.